What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am cutting it a little behind, but I have finally decided to rank all 5 Indiana Jones movies from worst to best. I'm a huge fan of this franchise, as you know, so this is a pretty big list for me to take care of, especially considering the fact that it's been a whole 15 years since we finally got another Indiana Jones movie, and I finally got to see Dial of Destiny during the summer back in Palm Springs. So this is pretty big for me. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what your favorite Indiana Jones movie is, and you can even give me a ranking of how you would rank all 5 of these movies. And with all that said, let's get into the video. Coming in last place for me is going to have to be Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I feel like this movie could have been better if they had chosen a better way to execute it, because there are some pretty nice ideas that they got going inside of this movie. I mean, it's nice seeing Indiana Jones at this different phase in his life, coming off 20 years after the Last Crusade, and him having this father and son relationship with Mutt and Shia LaBeouf in the role. And I think Kate Blanchett kind of serves as a nice new villain inside of this franchise, but I don't think that they did some pretty smart ideas with the execution, and I think the plot itself just doesn't really fit inside of this franchise, mainly because now we're doing this whole thing with aliens and the whole Crystal Skull plot line. It's just like taking this huge risk inside of the franchise, and I don't really think that aliens work pretty well as this artifacts Chase MacGuffin piece for an Indiana Jones movie. And at the same time, this movie also has a couple of awkward ideas. I mean, there's this whole sequence in the middle, this whole car chase where Shia LaBeouf is sword fighting Kate Blanchett on top of a truck, and then right after that he's swinging across trees with monkeys, and then right after the car chase there's this whole sequence where they're being attacked by a bunch of giant ants, or I mean they're running from these big ants, and then like right after the ant sequence there's this whole waterfall the whole waterfall chase. So this movie just kind of felt a little all over the place. I mean, it seemed like they almost had a good idea and story pitch for this movie, but I just don't think they had some pretty good ideas with the execution. So for me, this one easily comes in the last place. At number 4 is Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. And I might be praising this movie too much, as most of you have been saying, but I mean, I saw this movie when I was on a trip. My family and I were on a trip to Palm Springs, and we all each got matching Indiana Jones shirts going to see this movie. So I just thought it was cool seeing an Indiana Jones movie in the theater. So I I don't hate this movie as much as the internet is just trashing this movie as far as like how the box office and critics have been treating it. But I thought this was a nice way. It was nice seeing Indiana Jones at this different stage in life, showing how he's not that spark that most people had used to see him in the previous movies inside of this franchise. And it was still it did a better job like than Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls in like the MacGuffin storyline with the dial. I don't think the Crystal Skull thing in the last movie really worked. But then again, it does have time travel in it, so it does still go a little bit off the rails just as much as Crystal Skulls did, while still improving a little bit, coming back to the novelty of the original trilogy. But then again, it also the audience still has the knowledge that Harrison Ford is 80 years old, so it has that blockbuster issue of relying too much on CGI. I mean, Temple of Doom ended with this whole final battle with showing a bunch of these people on top of a bridge, falling off a bridge. And then, so when you go into this movie and you see CGI Harrison Ford running on top of a train as the opening sequence, it just doesn't really feel as realistic. So, this movie I enjoyed a little more than Crystal Skulls, but still has some of the issues. Coming in third place is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And I said this in my Dial of Destiny movie review that this is the most action-heavy movie out of all the Indiana Jones films, because just right from the first 30 minutes of the movie, we're doing like a fight sequence inside of the club, and then right after that, it's a car chase, and then right after that it's a plane crash, and then right after that it's this whole trip down a waterfall, down a river. So this movie just goes all out with the action in ways that I think that Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls and Isle of Destiny could have done better. And it's all practical stunt work, where especially where we get to the finale and then we see this entire sequence with a bunch of these guys falling off a bridge. This movie just goes all out, just as just this whole roller coaster ride inside of this franchise. And just I think that this one was actually the first Indiana Jones movie that I had actually watched. So I really have a lot of enjoyment out of it. And it has a couple of like the most fun characters inside of the franchise. I mean, I know that 90% of the Indiana Jones films and some of the people watching this movie are not watching this video are not supporters of the Willie Scott character. I thought she was pretty funny. I don't have too many problems with Willie as much as most of you do. Maybe it's because of the age that I watched this movie. I just thought that she was kind of funny. Short Round, we also got Short Round in there too, which is just a scene stealer and just like probably just one of the funniest child actors that you can get from the 80s. And so this movie I really have a lot of enjoyment out of, but I mean, it is still probably the weakest of the original trilogy. The runner-up is The Last Crusade, and I know that a lot of you guys have this movie at number one, and I can see why, because this is easily the funniest movie in the franchise, at least just for me. Like, throughout the whole thing, I was just laughing at every time I rewatch this movie. I just laugh at some of the jokes, and even the dynamic between Indiana Jones and his father is just perfect. And especially what works about this movie is that they casted Sean Connery as Indiana Jones's dad, which if you're aware, like during the first production of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they were first setting it up, Steven Spielberg had pointed out that he actually wanted to direct a James Bond movie. So the fact that he has a James Bond actor as Indiana Jones's dad makes sense. So that all that is like the history behind that is like pretty cool. And they just have like such a great dynamic between one another, and Sean Connery just like gives just such an amazing performance where you can just buy that he could be Indiana Jones's father. And this movie probably has like the best adventure setup like throughout out of all these movies. I really love the Holy Grail plot line. I think that it's one of the best MacGuffin storylines in this movie. And if the number one pick did not exist, this movie would definitely be one of the greatest adventure movies of all time. But coming in at number one for me is going to have to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, my shirt had probably given this away from just at the beginning. You guys had obviously had to have seen this one coming. This movie is just the combination of adventure movies of the 21st century. Almost every single adventure movie up until before this movie has just built off of its foundation, and it's just kind of the responsible for what made this franchise great in the first place. And somehow George Lucas and Steven Spielberg had just like somehow in the 80s they just got like these great ideas and then just like found a way to just make impactful blockbusters. And just even from right out of the opening, this movie is iconic with the idol swap and then the whole temple sequence where he's being chased by Boulder. And just the way that they had set up this story was just like so compelling. And even the whole adventure throughout it is just like so much fun to watch, and just filled with just some memorable moments and just a great love story between Indy and Marion. And Indy as a character is just so interesting because he is kind of this like swashbuckler James Bond type character, but he's not exactly presented as a good guy inside of this movie. He's kind of a grave robber, but somehow they're able to work their magic and just make him just such a compelling character. And just from beginning to end throughout the entire thing, it's filled with some iconic moments with the entire town city sequence. And then you have that classic moment where he shoots the guy holding the sword, and then you even have the whole ending you even have the whole temple, the idol room sequence where he's holds the idol and stick into the sun. And then you even have the entire ending with the ark. It's just like throughout this movie, it's filled with just like such memorable sequences and some iconic moments that stood the test of time for adventure movies up until this point. And you even obviously got to talk about Harrison Ford in the role and John Williams' score. John Williams' piece of music that is just one of the greatest music pieces of all time. So for me, this one easily comes in at number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more content. And if you're a huge fan of this franchise like me, be sure to let me know what your favorite movie in this franchise is. And I'm going to guarantee that a lot of you guys are going to go with Raiders of the Lost Ark, just as me. I mean, I know that a lot of you guys like Last Crusade also, but between the mix in there, I'm more of a guy for Raiders of the Lost Ark. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.